And welcome to TVW's special coverage of Sine Die, the final day of the 2026 legislative session. I'm joined now by House Republican Leader Drew Stokesbary. Thank you so much for your time today. You guys have had a couple of late nights, you're probably exhausted, but if you had to give the session a grade or rate the session overall, how would you rate it?
Unfortunately, not very well. I mean, I think Republicans had a lot of successes relative to our minority status. I think we stopped a lot of bad bills. There was a number of bills the majority introduced throughout session that would have made life even more expensive for struggling Washington families, would have made our communities less safe. I think we're pretty proud as Republicans to have stopped a lot of those bills, but the legislature still passed a lot of other troubling bills. Probably the biggest one is a state income tax. It applies to folks earning over $1 million today, but Democrats voted down attempts to put that on the ballot as a referendum to let the people figure out what they want, and also voted down attempts to put that $1 million in the Constitution. So at any point in the future, the legislature, by a simple majority vote, could change that threshold, and Republicans believe that an income tax on anyone today is going to turn into an income tax on everyone tomorrow. So in that regard, it was kind of disappointing to see that happen. And
so a widely expected legal challenge is that's what everyone thinks is going to happen here. How do you see that playing out?
You know, if the Supreme Court follows the law and follows the Constitution and calls balls and strikes, this is one of the easiest cases that ever happened, that you'll ever see. I'm a lawyer by trade. Lawyers have this joke that anytime somebody asks us a question, the answer is always the same, that it depends. Well, this is one of the very few legal questions where the answer shouldn't really be that difficult. The Constitution is very clear. Property taxes must be uniform, limited to a rate of 1% or less. And it's obvious from the plain meaning of the word that income is a type of property. If income isn't your property, then whose property is it? We certainly don't think it's the government's. So I think it's very clear that income is property. That's what the Supreme Court said in 1933. If they apply the law fairly and equally, that's what they should say in 2026. And if that's what they do, then it's an easy case, and the tax will be overturned as unconstitutional.
Supporters of the proposal argue that it makes the tax code more fair. They say it helps families in the middle and then the lower socioeconomic arena to try to do a little better, a little relief, small business owners.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
No, it's not. There's not really any relief, and any relief there is what the Senate Majority Leader would call a pie crust promise. There's no reduction no meaningful reduction in taxes for those on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. If you're struggling to make ends meet right now, if you're looking at the rising price of gas and groceries and housing and childcare, and you're living paycheck to paycheck, how is your life better just because some rich guy in Bellevue has to write a check to the State Department of Revenue? It's not. The bill did absolutely nothing to relieve the tax burden on the lower and middle class, on working Washingtonians, and that was a huge missed opportunity. The small things in the bill are easily gotten rid of in the future. There's a provision for free lunches for kids, but we've seen what happens around here. A program gets funded for a year or two, and then folks' priorities shift, and it's no longer a priority anymore. So all in all, I think it's a really unfair deal for working families because they're not going to see really any benefit from this.
So I want to get your take on the budgets that are still being discussed, but also one aspect of the budgets. A part of the original legislation for the new tax would have devoted a couple of $100 million a year to cities and counties for public defense. That's no longer part of that bill. My understanding is there's money in the budget for that. What's your take?
Yeah, I think that's true. The conference budget only came out about 24 hours ago, so I'm not sure I saw that specifically, but I understand that was the plan. Republicans have always said that we should be funding more public defenders. It's a necessary component of our criminal justice system, and if we want to get these violent offenders off the streets, we've got to give them a trial first, and they can't have a trial until they have a lawyer. So it's a necessary part of the system to keep our community safe, but Republicans have always thought that it's a high enough priority, we should just fund it within existing resources, that we don't need to go out and raise taxes on people to do something that's part of our basic constitutional duty.
Were there any bipartisan wins from your perspective? A lot of times the capital budget's popular, a lot of times the transportation budget's popular. What's your take?
Well, I think it's important to note that there was a bipartisan vote on the income tax. Every Republican and a handful of Democrats joined up for a bipartisan rejection of that idea, and unfortunately, it still passed over that. Like you said, the capital budget I think is going to do a lot of good for our communities. I think the transportation budget will as well. We figured out a way to allow electric vehicle makers, Rivian and Lucid, to be able to sell directly to consumers here in Washington. That's been something we've been trying to navigate for a couple years, and we finally figured out a path forward for that. So there was a nice bipartisan vote on that last night as well.
Any other policy areas that jump out at you? There were other, AI, public safety.
Yeah, the legislature passed a bill to regulate AI chatbots, which I think was probably a good and necessary step. There were parts of the bill I didn't like, but I ended up voting for it, and overall I think struck a better balance than some of the other bills. For Washington being as having a reputation as such a tech-friendly and pro-tech state, we have a very anti-tech legislature. There's hardly anybody here. We're all part-time citizen legislators. We all have jobs outside of here. Hardly any of us have jobs in tech, though, and a lot of the policies that get proposed are kind of anti-technology. And so I think Republicans were pretty happy to see the most anti-technology, anti-progress bills get voted down. There was an Attorney General priority bill that would have regulated what sort of videos TikTok and Facebook and Instagram can show you, rather than showing you things based on what you're interested in. It would have to show everybody the same thing. We think that was pretty unwise and needlessly restrictive. There's a couple other bills that kind of did the same thing. There was a data center bill that would have made it really hard to keep building data centers in Washington State, which create a ton of jobs for us and make us a leader in the tech world. That bill died. So I think we were pleased that some of the most anti-tech legislation was not able to cross the finish line.
I want to ask you about data centers. There is this debate about how data centers, or if data centers, affect the price of electricity, just because they need so much of it in a given area. Is that a legitimate concern from your perspective?
It's a concern to the extent that it's a question worth asking. It's an important question, but I've talked to both the data centers, the power providers, and have walked away with a totally different understanding than I think what is often presented in the media. Data centers do use a lot of power, but they're not your normal customer that hooks up and pays the normal customer rates. They have special deals with utilities. Some of them pay an additional amount for the privilege of making sure they always have enough power, and that is extra money for the power company to reduce the pressure on rates for regular people like you and me. Other data centers don't pay for that, but they get power like you and I do, and they aren't guaranteed that they'll always have it. And so the structure actually, I think, is really good for consumers. It makes it so we do have enough power and we do get it at the most affordable price. And I think sort of the sky is falling rhetoric is a little misguided. I think the better solution, rather than trying to limit data centers, is to figure out how we can expand our electrical grid. How do we invest in tomorrow's technology? We got to stop undoing the progress we've made with hydro. That's a great source for base load. We got to then figure out how do we harness new technology, especially small modular nuclear. I think that will allow us to really go into the 21st, 22nd century and do a lot of good things here in Washington.
What policy or financial legislation do you anticipate House Republicans will emphasize or bring again in 2027?
We are going to continue to be laser focused on making Washington more affordable. The majority party wants to blame the other Washington for tariff policies driving up prices here in Washington. And as Republicans in this state, as conservatives, I don't really like tariffs either. But tariffs don't explain why this Washington is more expensive than pretty much every other state, and it doesn't explain why things that are totally unconnected to tariffs, like childcare, are so much more expensive here than other states. It is clearly this Washington's policies are making this Washington be more expensive than any other state, and legislative Republicans are going to be laser focused for the next year and beyond at getting those price increases under control so that regular people can afford to live in our great state.
What do you predict that the average family that may be watching this in a year, 2 years from now, what will they look back and think about this session?
I think they're going to wonder if passing the income tax really is leading to a precipitous decline in Washington's prosperity. It's very easy. It's politically popular. It's in line with sort of the populism of the 2010s and 2020s to say, let's tax the rich. There is some merit into wanting to rebalance our tax code, and yes, those folks probably can pay taxes more easily. But those folks do a lot of other things than build giant swimming pools full of cash like Scrooge McDuck. They create jobs, they build businesses, Yeah, Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates have made a lot of money, more money than you and I can dream of. But they also created great companies that have changed the way regular people interact with the world and interact with each other. And they've hired tens of thousands of Washingtonians, and they've created prosperity for those people and for their families and their communities. And so I worry that driving those folks out of state will not just hurt the millionaires themselves, but it's actually going to hurt regular people like you and me, because there's going to be less jobs in Washington. There's going to be less tax revenue to fund the other programs that we all believe in. And I think in the long run, it's really, really unwise economic policy. And in a couple of years, I think folks will start to realize it when jobs start to leave, when companies start to leave, and I think we'll really come to regret it.
We will leave it there. Thank you for your time. That's House Republican Leader Drew Stokesbary, and thank you for watching. Please stay with us. We have more to come after the break.